Welcome. Tonight, leave the noise of the day behind. Find a comfortable place, close your eyes whenever you're ready, and let every slow breath carry you a little farther from the busy world. Our story begins in a quiet village called Ashmere, where every home glows with the warm light of a lantern, and every evening feels wrapped in peace. Hidden beyond its gentle forests lies a secret that few have ever discovered, a magical sea where the stars do not stay in the sky. They drift across the water, shining softly through the night, waiting for someone brave enough to follow their light. There lives a kind young traveler named Eli. He isn't the strongest hero or the wisest explorer. He is simply someone with a gentle heart who believes that even the smallest act of kindness can change the world. When an ancient lantern suddenly awakens, Eli is called on a journey unlike any other. Along the way, he will meet mysterious guardians, silent rivers, whispering forests, forgotten lighthouses, a loyal white fox, and a sea filled with sleeping stars. Each step will reveal a new mystery, and each lantern will illuminate a forgotten memory. This isn't a story of battles or fear. It's a story of hope, a story of friendship, a story of quiet courage. So, let the worries of today drift away like leaves upon a peaceful stream. Allow the gentle glow of the lantern to guide your imagination, and let the calm rhythm of the sea carry you toward a restful night. Now, the stars are waiting, the lantern is glowing, and Eli's unforgettable journey is about to begin. Part 1. On the edge of a forgotten valley, hidden between gentle hills and endless pine forests, stood the quiet village of Ashmere. It was a place where evenings arrived softly, carrying the scent of lavender, cedar wood, and fresh rain. Every sunset painted the rooftops with warm shades of gold before fading into a sky filled with countless stars. The villagers believed that peaceful nights were gifts from the heavens, so every family placed a glowing lantern outside their front door before going to bed. From the highest hill, the village looked like a river of tiny golden lights flowing through the darkness. Among the villagers lived a young mapmaker named Eli. He was not rich, powerful, or famous. His small wooden home stood beside an old oak tree, where birds greeted every sunrise with cheerful songs. Eli spent his days drawing forgotten roads, abandoned bridges, and hidden woodland paths that most travelers no longer remember. While others searched for treasure buried beneath ancient castles or hidden inside mysterious caves, Eli believed the greatest discoveries were quiet places that brought peace to the heart. Each evening he walked through the forest carrying nothing more than a notebook, a pencil, and endless curiosity. One calm autumn afternoon, as gentle winds danced through the colorful leaves, an elderly traveler entered Ashmere. His silver beard reached nearly to his waist, and his weathered cloak shimmered faintly whenever sunlight touched its fabric. He carried a long walking stick carved with tiny crescent moons and stars. Although no one recognized him, every villager felt strangely comfortable in his presence. After enjoying warm soup and fresh bread at the village inn, the old traveler asked a single question. "Who is the mapmaker?" The villagers pointed toward Eli's little cottage. A few minutes later, the traveler knocked softly on the wooden door. Eli welcomed him inside with a warm smile and poured a cup of herbal tea. "I've been searching for you," the traveler said quietly. "For me?" Eli asked. The old man nodded before reaching into a worn leather satchel. Carefully, he unfolded an ancient piece of parchment whose edges had become soft with age. Most of the ink had faded away, yet one remarkable drawing remained perfectly clear. It was a glowing lantern beneath a green hill. The lantern seemed almost alive. Whenever Eli looked away and back again, the tiny golden light appeared to flicker gently across the page. "This map has waited for many generations," the traveler whispered. "Only someone with patience rather than ambition can finish it." Eli studied every faded line. "Where does it lead?" The traveler smiled. "Not to riches, not to a kingdom, not even to glory. It leads to something far more valuable." Outside, evening birds sang their final songs before night settled across the valley. The traveler lowered his voice. "It leads to the lantern beneath the whispering hill, a place where forgotten dreams continue glowing long after the dreamers have gone." A cool breeze drifted through the open window. For just a moment, Eli thought he heard distant whispers carried upon the wind. They sounded peaceful, almost welcoming. Without fully understanding why, he gently rolled the ancient map and placed it beside his own notebooks. Deep inside, he already knew that tomorrow, when the first morning light touched the hills, his quiet life would begin changing forever. Part 2. The first rays of morning sunlight slipped gently through Eli's window, painting the wooden floor with soft bands of gold. Outside, the village of Ashmere was slowly waking. Bakers lit their ovens, birds welcomed the dawn with cheerful songs, and a cool breeze carried the sweet fragrance of pine trees across the quiet streets. Eli rose early, unable to stop thinking about the mysterious parchment resting on his desk. When he unrolled it once again, something had changed. A thin golden line now stretched beyond the drawing of the glowing lantern, winding toward the eastern forest. The line had not been there the night before. "It is showing the way," Eli whispered. Just then, a gentle knock sounded at his door. The elderly traveler stood outside, smiling as though he already knew what Eli had discovered. "You've seen it," the old man said. Eli nodded. "The map is alive. It awakens only for those who choose curiosity over fear." Without another word, the traveler handed Eli a small brass compass unlike any he had ever seen. Its glass reflected tiny stars even in daylight, and its needle refused to point north. "It remembers places instead of directions," the traveler explained. "What happens if I follow it?" Eli asked. "You will begin a journey that cannot be measured in miles." Eli looked toward the peaceful village. Children laughed beside the well, smoke curled from stone chimneys, and the familiar sound of church bells echoed gently across the valley. Leaving would not be easy. Yet something deep inside his heart told him that the mysterious lantern had been waiting for him long before he had been born. He packed only what he truly needed: a warm blanket, fresh bread, a small water bottle, his notebook, 2 pencils, and the ancient map. When he stepped outside, the traveler had vanished. No footprints remained on the dusty road. Only a single white feather rested where he had been standing. Eli carefully tucked the feather inside his notebook before following the compass toward the eastern forest. As he entered the towering pines, the sounds of the village slowly faded behind him. Instead came the peaceful music of rustling leaves, distant streams, and birds hidden high among the branches. Hours passed without hurry. The forest seemed strangely welcoming. Wildflowers bloomed beside forgotten trails. Butterflies drifted lazily through beams of sunlight. Even the air felt softer than anywhere Eli had ever traveled. Near midday he reached an ancient stone bridge covered with thick green moss. What surprised him most was not the bridge itself. There was no river beneath it. Instead, endless silver mist flowed silently below, moving like a calm sea of clouds. Carved into the first stone were several faded words. "Only gentle hearts may cross safely." Eli took a slow breath. The compass pointed straight ahead. Without hesitation, he stepped onto the bridge. The stone felt warm beneath his boots. With every step, tiny golden lights appeared around him, floating peacefully through the air like glowing fireflies. Halfway across, he heard soft laughter. It echoed through the mist below, not frightening, but warm and joyful, as though old friends were sharing happy memories somewhere beyond the clouds. Then, just as he reached the center of the bridge, a calm voice spoke from the white mist below. "Welcome, Eli." He stopped. The voice knew his name. But when he looked around, no one could be seen. Part 3. Eli remained perfectly still in the center of the ancient bridge. The golden lights continued drifting around him, moving slowly like tiny stars floating through the morning air. Below, the silver mist rolled gently across the empty space, hiding whatever rested beneath. "Who's there?" Eli asked softly. For a few moments, only silence answered. Then the mist began to swirl. A graceful white fox stepped onto the bridge as though it had been walking upon invisible ground. Its thick fur shimmered with a soft silver glow, and its bright amber eyes reflected kindness instead of fear. "You heard my voice," the fox said calmly. Eli nodded. "You know my name. I have known it for a very long time." The fox sat quietly, wrapping its tail around its paws. The Whispering Hill remembers every traveler who carries hope instead of greed. Eli looked at the strange compass in his hand. Are you the guardian of this place? The fox smiled. I am only one of many guides. Without another word, it turned and walked toward the far end of the bridge. Eli followed, feeling strangely peaceful despite everything that had happened. Beyond the bridge, the forest looked different. The trees grew taller than castle towers, their branches weaving together like the roof of a great green cathedral. Tiny blue flowers covered the forest floor, filling the air with a gentle fragrance that reminded Eli of fresh rain. As they continued, birds landed fearlessly upon the branches above them. Squirrels watched from ancient oaks, and rabbits quietly crossed the winding trail. It felt as though every creature already knew the fox. After nearly an hour of walking, they entered a circular clearing surrounded by 7 enormous oak trees. Each tree stood wider than a cottage. Their branches reached toward one another, forming a living crown above the clearing. At its center rested a smooth stone pedestal. Upon it sat a crystal bottle no larger than Eli's hand. Inside floated a single glowing feather. The feather slowly turned in circles, filling the bottle with warm golden light. What is it? Eli whispered. The first memory, replied the fox. The first memory. The fox nodded. Long ago, the lantern beneath the Whispering Hill was kept alive by 7 living memories. Each one represents a gift the world slowly forgot. Eli carefully lifted the crystal bottle. The moment his fingers touched the cool glass, the feather shone brilliantly. Golden light spread across the clearing. Images appeared within the air. A child sharing bread with a stranger. An old woman comforting a lonely traveler. Neighbors laughing together beside glowing fireplaces. Families embracing after long journeys home. The beautiful scenes drifted silently around Eli before fading like gentle dreams. Their memories, he whispered. They are kindness, the fox answered. The world remembers wars more easily than compassion. These memories must be gathered before the lantern can shine again. Suddenly, a deep bell echoed across the distant hills. Once, twice, 3 times, the peaceful birds flew into the sky all at once. Even the gentle wind became perfectly still. The fox's calm expression slowly changed. Its ears lifted, its eyes narrowed toward the northern mountains. They've awakened, it murmured. Eli held the crystal bottle a little tighter. Who has awakened? The fox looked directly into his eyes. The keepers of forgotten shadows. Before Eli could ask another question, the compass in his hand began glowing with a pale blue light, pointing toward a narrow path that had not been there only moments before. Part 4. The narrow path shimmered beneath the pale blue light of the compass, as though it had been hidden from the world until this very moment. Eli looked at the white fox, who gave a gentle nod without speaking. It is time, the fox said quietly. Together they stepped onto the newly revealed trail. The forest grew even quieter. The cheerful songs of birds faded into the distance, replaced by the soothing sound of leaves rustling high above. Shafts of sunlight slipped through the branches, creating soft patterns that danced across the moss-covered ground. As they walked, Eli noticed something unusual. The trees beside the path were marked with tiny silver symbols. Some looked like stars, others like moons, while a few resembled lanterns glowing beneath hills. Who carved these? Eli asked. The first mapmakers, the fox replied. Long before villages were built, they traveled the world, protecting places that carried ancient magic. Were they searching for the lantern too? They were its guardians. The answer lingered in Eli's thoughts. After another hour, the path opened into a peaceful meadow filled with thousands of white flowers swaying gently in the breeze. At the center stood a lonely willow tree beside a crystal-clear pond. The surface of the water was perfectly still. Not a single ripple disturbed its reflection. The fox stopped walking. This is the mirror pond. Eli knelt beside the water and looked down. Instead of seeing his own reflection, he saw himself as a small boy sitting beneath the great oak tree outside his childhood home. His mother was reading him bedtime stories while evening stars slowly appeared overhead. The memory felt so real that he could almost hear her gentle voice. A warm smile crossed his face. "These are my memories. The pond shows moments your heart never wished to lose," the fox explained. As Eli watched, the image slowly faded. In its place appeared another scene. A lonely traveler sat beside a snowy road, shivering beneath the cold night sky. Without hesitation, young Eli offered the traveler half of his only loaf of bread. He had almost forgotten that day. The fox smiled softly. "The lantern has not." Before Eli could respond, the still water suddenly rippled. Dark circles spread across the pond. The bright reflection vanished. Slowly, a shadow appeared beneath the surface. It had no clear face. Only two pale eyes looked upward from the darkness. Eli instinctively stepped back. The shadow did not rise from the water. Instead, it whispered, "He carries the first memory." The voice was cold but strangely calm. Within seconds, the dark figure disappeared beneath the surface, leaving the pond peaceful once again. The fox lowered its head. "They know where we are now." "Who are they?" Eli asked. "The keepers of forgotten shadows." "Will they follow us?" "They already have." A cool wind swept across the meadow, bending the white flowers in a single direction. Far away, beyond the rolling hills, a tall tower briefly appeared through the morning mist before vanishing again. Eli blinked. "Did you see that?" The fox nodded. "The Tower of Echoes. What is it?" "A place that appears only to those chosen by the lantern." The compass suddenly grew warm in Eli's hand. Its blue light shifted toward the distant hills. Without another word, Eli took a slow breath, adjusted his backpack, and followed the glowing path, unaware that someone unseen had already begun watching every step he took through the silent forest. Part 5. The path beyond the mirror pond curved gently through an ancient forest where towering cedars stretched high into the sky. Their branches formed a peaceful green ceiling, allowing only thin ribbons of sunlight to reach the soft earth below. Eli walked beside the white fox in comfortable silence, listening to the quiet rhythm of nature. The strange compass continued to glow with a pale blue light. Its needle no longer moved from side to side. Instead, it pointed with complete certainty toward the distant hills where the mysterious Tower of Echoes had appeared. Hours passed without hurry. They crossed tiny wooden bridges, followed sparkling streams, and climbed gentle slopes covered with wildflowers. Every now and then, Eli noticed smooth stones standing beside the trail. Each one carried the same lantern symbol he had seen on the ancient map. "It feels as though someone prepared this journey long ago," Eli said. "They did," the fox replied. "Every traveler chosen by the lantern walks this path, though no two journeys are ever exactly the same." As the afternoon sun softened, they reached a wide field of golden grass. The breeze moved across it like slow waves upon a quiet sea. In the center stood a single apple tree. Its branches were filled with bright silver apples that shimmered beneath the sunlight. "I've never seen fruit like this," Eli whispered. "The tree of gentle choices," the fox explained. "It offers only one apple to each traveler." Eli stepped closer. Among hundreds of shining apples, only one slowly drifted downward, landing softly in his hands. It felt pleasantly warm. Without thinking, Eli took a small bite. The fruit tasted sweeter than honey and cooler than spring water. At once, a feeling of calm spread through his heart. For a brief moment, every worry disappeared. He remembered his parents smiling, peaceful evenings in Ashmere, the comforting glow of lanterns, and the quiet happiness found in simple days. A tiny golden seed remained in his palm. "Keep it," the fox said. "It will become important when the time is right." Eli carefully placed the seed inside his notebook beside the white feather. As they prepared to continue, a gentle voice drifted across the field. "Welcome, Keeper." Eli turned quickly. An elderly woman wearing a long blue cloak stood beneath the apple tree. Her silver hair flowed down her back, and kind eyes sparkled beneath the shade of her hood. "You've been expecting me?" Eli asked. She smiled warmly. "For longer than you can imagine." Without another word, she raised her hand toward the sky. Dozens of glowing birds appeared from the surrounding trees. They circled above Eli before flying toward the distant mountains. "They are guiding us," she said softly. "But they are also warning us." The woman's smile slowly faded. "The shadows are growing stronger." Before Eli could ask another question, one of the glowing birds suddenly dropped from the sky. It landed gently at his feet. Its golden feathers instantly turned gray. Then, without making a sound, the little bird vanished into silver dust. The entire field fell silent. Even the wind stopped blowing. The fox looked toward the northern horizon with quiet concern. "They are closer than I feared." High above the distant hills, a dark shape briefly crossed the evening sky. It was far too large to be an ordinary bird. Eli watched as it disappeared into the gathering clouds, leaving behind a single question that echoed quietly inside his mind. What kind of creature could cast a shadow that reached across an entire valley? Part 6. The enormous shadow disappeared behind the silver clouds, leaving the valley peaceful once again. Yet the silence felt different now. It was no longer the comforting quiet Eli had known since leaving Ashmere. It carried a gentle warning, as though the forest itself had paused to listen. The elderly woman lowered her hand, and the remaining golden birds settled quietly among the branches of the apple tree. "They have seen the shadow glider," she said. "The shadow glider?" Eli asked. "It serves the keepers of forgotten shadows. It does not hunt with claws or teeth. It searches for fear." Eli glanced toward the distant hills. "What happens if it finds someone?" The woman smiled kindly. "It whispers doubts until travelers lose sight of their own hearts." The white fox stepped forward. "That is why we must keep moving." The old woman reached into the sleeve of her blue cloak and removed a tiny crystal lantern no larger than an acorn. Though no flame burned inside, it glowed with a warm golden light. "This belonged to one of the first guardians," she said, placing it gently into Eli's hands. "It will not light your path." "What will it do?" Eli asked. "It will remind you that hope shines even when you cannot see it." Eli carefully placed the tiny lantern beside the glowing feather and silver seed inside his satchel. As the sun slowly drifted toward the western hills, the three travelers continued their journey. Soon they entered a peaceful forest unlike any Eli had ever seen. Every tree had white bark that shimmered softly in the evening light. Tiny blue leaves floated gently through the air without ever touching the ground. The entire woodland seemed wrapped in quiet magic. "What is this place?" Eli whispered. "The forest of listening," replied the fox. "Here, the trees remember every kind word ever spoken beneath their branches." Eli smiled. Then he noticed something unusual. Soft voices surrounded them. They were not frightening. Instead, they sounded like gentle conversations carried by the breeze. A father encouraging his daughter. Friends laughing around a campfire. A grandmother singing a lullaby. The voices blended together into a peaceful melody that seemed to calm every anxious thought. Eli closed his eyes for a moment. "I could stay here forever." "Many travelers wish to," the fox answered gently. "But beautiful places are meant to inspire us, not keep us." As twilight settled across the forest, the path led them to a quiet clearing. In its center stood a stone fountain. Clear water flowed endlessly from a lantern-shaped carving at its top. Beside the fountain rested a weathered stone bench. The elderly woman smiled. "We will spend the night here." Eli filled his bottle with the cool spring water before sitting beside the fountain. The water tasted fresh and carried a faint hint of mint. Above them, countless stars slowly appeared across the deep blue sky. The forest grew wonderfully peaceful. For the first time since beginning the journey, Eli felt completely at rest. Just as sleep began to find him, the tiny crystal lantern inside his satchel flickered. Once, twice, then it shone brighter than before. Across the fountain, a faint golden figure slowly appeared in the moonlight. It looked like a young girl holding an old lantern close to her heart. She smiled at Eli. Then, in a voice softer than the evening wind, she whispered, "You are closer than the map has ever carried anyone before." Part 7. The golden figure stood quietly beside the stone fountain, her lantern glowing with a soft light that seemed brighter than the moon itself. She appeared no older than 12, dressed in a simple white cloak that moved gently without the touch of any wind. Eli slowly rose from the stone bench. The white fox remained calm, showing no sign of surprise. "You can see her," the fox said softly. "Yes," Eli answered. The young girl smiled. "That means the lantern has truly accepted you." Her voice was gentle, almost like a lullaby carried through the night. "Who are you?" Eli asked. "My name has been forgotten by the world," she replied. "Long ago, I was one of the first children to protect the Whispering Hill." She lifted her small lantern. Inside it danced a tiny golden flame unlike any ordinary fire. "It has never gone out," she whispered. Eli stepped a little closer. The warm light reached his hands, filling him with a comforting peace. "I thought this place was only a legend." So did many others. The girl looked toward the quiet forest. But legends do not disappear. They simply wait for someone willing to believe. For several peaceful moments, no one spoke. The fountain continued its gentle song while thousands of stars shimmered overhead. Finally, the girl reached into the pocket of her cloak and removed a tiny silver key shaped like a leaf. She placed it carefully into Eli's hand. "This opens no ordinary door." "What does it unlock?" "A memory that has never been forgotten." Before Eli could ask another question, the key gave off a faint golden glow. Far away, somewhere beyond the dark hills, an old bell rang once. The sound drifted across the valley like a slow wave. The girl's smile slowly faded. "They heard it." "Who?" Eli asked quietly. "The keepers." The fox immediately stood. "We must leave before sunrise." The girl nodded. "They cannot enter this clearing while the stars remain above us. But when the first light touches the trees, their search will begin again." Eli looked around the peaceful clearing. It was difficult to imagine danger reaching such a beautiful place. The elderly woman spread a warm blanket beside the fountain. "You should rest," she said kindly. "Tomorrow will ask more of your heart than today." Eli lay beneath the stars, using his backpack as a pillow. The crystal lantern, the glowing feather, the silver seed, and the little leaf-shaped key rested safely inside his satchel. The gentle sound of flowing water slowly eased his thoughts. Before closing his eyes, he noticed the mysterious girl sitting quietly beside the fountain. She was humming a peaceful melody that Eli somehow recognized, although he could not remember where he had first heard it. As sleep slowly carried him into gentle dreams, he found himself standing before a great hill covered with glowing lanterns. At its summit stood a magnificent tree with branches reaching into the stars. Beneath the tree waited 7 empty lantern stands. Only one held a golden flame. A calm voice echoed through the dream. "When the 7th lantern burns again, the forgotten dawn shall return." Eli reached toward the glowing lantern. Just before his fingers touched its warm light, he heard footsteps approaching from somewhere beyond the hill. Someone else had entered the dream. Part 8. The footsteps echoed softly across the hill, slow and steady, as though the unseen traveler had walked this dream many times before. Eli remained beside the glowing lantern, watching the gentle mist drift between the ancient trees. The magnificent tree above him shimmered with thousands of tiny lights. Each leaf reflected a different memory: children laughing beside rivers, grandparents telling stories beneath warm blankets, friends sharing meals after long journeys, and peaceful evenings filled with quiet conversation. The dream felt wonderfully calm. Yet the approaching footsteps grew closer. Out of the silver mist emerged a tall figure wearing a cloak woven from starlight. His face was hidden beneath a wide hood, but his presence carried neither fear nor anger. Instead, it brought an overwhelming feeling of peace. "You have reached the hill of quiet dreams," the stranger said. His voice sounded gentle, like wind passing through autumn leaves. "Who are you?" Eli asked. "I have carried many names." The stranger looked toward the single burning lantern. "But here, I am simply the first keeper." Eli followed his gaze. "There are 7 lantern stands. There were once 7 flames. What happened to the others?" "They slowly faded as the world forgot compassion, patience, gratitude, courage, hope, wonder, and peace." The first keeper stepped closer. When even one of those gifts disappears from the human heart, a lantern grows dim. Eli looked at the lonely golden flame. So they can shine again. Yes, but only when the 7 living memories are reunited. The words filled Eli with quiet determination. I want to help. The keeper smiled beneath his hood. I know. He gently touched the trunk of the enormous tree. At once, 7 tiny lights floated down from its branches, circling Eli like glowing fireflies. Each light settled briefly upon the satchel resting over Eli's shoulder. The feather glowed brighter. The silver seed became pleasantly warm. The tiny crystal lantern shone with a richer golden light. Even the little leaf-shaped key sparkled softly. They have accepted your promise, the keeper whispered. Suddenly, the peaceful breeze stopped. The glowing leaves upon the great tree became perfectly still. Far beyond the hill, a low rumble rolled across the dream-like distant thunder. The keeper slowly lifted his head. They have found the edge of this place. Dark clouds gathered along the horizon. Within them, countless tiny shadows circled silently. Eli felt the warmth of the golden lantern begin to fade. Can they enter the dream? He asked. Not while you remember who you are. The keeper raised one hand. The lone lantern burned brighter than ever before, pushing the darkness back across the hills. The shadows retreated, but only for a moment. Before everything dissolved into golden light, the keeper spoke one final sentence. When you awaken, trust the river instead of the road. The dream slowly disappeared. Eli opened his eyes beneath the star-filled sky beside the quiet fountain. Morning had not yet arrived. The white fox was already awake, staring toward the eastern forest. Without turning around, it spoke in a calm but serious voice. They are here, somewhere beyond the trees, hidden in the darkness before dawn. A single branch snapped. Part 9. The sharp crack of the broken branch echoed through the silent forest. Eli sat up immediately, his heartbeat quickening for the first time since leaving Ashmere. Moonlight still covered the clearing, and the gentle fountain continued to sing as if nothing had happened. The white fox remained perfectly still. Its amber eyes were fixed on the darkness between the trees. Do not be afraid, it whispered. They grow stronger when fear speaks louder than hope. Eli quietly reached for his satchel. Inside, the glowing feather, the silver seed, the crystal lantern, and the tiny leaf-shaped key were all exactly where he had left them. Their warm light brought him a sense of calm. The elderly woman slowly stood beside the fountain. They have crossed into the forest of listening, she said. But they cannot enter this clearing while the fountain still flows. Eli listened carefully. Beyond the trees came no footsteps. No voices, only silence. A silence so deep that even the wind seemed unwilling to disturb it. Then the tiny crystal lantern flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. The white fox looked toward the eastern sky. Dawn is almost here. As the first pale light appeared above the distant hills, the clearing began to change. The glowing girl who had visited during the night smiled warmly at Eli. It is time for me to leave. Will I see you again? Eli asked. When another lantern awakens, her form slowly became transparent. Before disappearing completely, she placed one glowing feather into the air. Instead of falling, it floated gently into Eli's satchel, joining the first feather already inside. For a brief moment, both feathers shone together. The elderly woman nodded with quiet satisfaction. The lantern has given you another blessing. Just then, the surface of the fountain became perfectly still. Instead of reflecting the morning sky, it showed a narrow blue river winding through a peaceful valley. The first keeper's final words returned to Eli's mind. Trust the river instead of the road. The dream, Eli whispered. The fox smiled. You remember. Without hesitation, Eli picked up his backpack. We follow the river. The elderly woman pointed toward a hidden trail behind the fountain. It will lead you there. What about you? Eli asked. My journey continues here. She gently touched Eli's shoulder. Every traveler must eventually walk beyond the protection of those who guided them. Eli bowed respectfully. Thank you. The old woman smiled. The kindness you carry will thank me one day. The white fox stepped onto the hidden trail. Together they entered the quiet forest once more. Within minutes, they heard flowing water. Soon a beautiful blue river appeared between the trees, its surface sparkling beneath the early morning sun. Unlike every river Eli had ever seen, this one flowed without making a sound. Not a splash, not a ripple, only perfect silence. The compass immediately turned toward the peaceful water. As Eli walked beside the silent river, something caught his eye. On the opposite bank stood a child wearing a gray cloak. The child smiled, then slowly raised one hand. In that hand rested an old lantern, the same lantern drawn on the ancient map. Part 10. Eli stopped beside the silent river, unable to take his eyes off the child across the water. Morning sunlight shimmered gently on the smooth surface, yet the river remained completely soundless. Not even the breeze disturbed its peaceful flow. The child stood quietly beneath a tall willow tree. The gray cloak reached almost to the ground, hiding everything except a pair of calm blue eyes. In small hands rested the old lantern from the ancient map. Its golden flame glowed softly, though no smoke rose into the air. "Who are you?" Eli called. The child smiled but did not answer. Instead, the lantern was lifted a little higher. Its warm light spread across the river like a ribbon of gold. The white fox watched in respectful silence. "Do you know this child?" Eli whispered. "The river guardian," the fox replied. "He speaks only when the river chooses." The child slowly knelt beside the water and placed one hand upon its surface. At once, gentle circles of light spread across the river. One after another, smooth stepping stones rose from beneath the clear water, forming a narrow path from one bank to the other. Eli looked at the fox. "Should we cross?" The fox gave a quiet nod. "The river has invited you." Eli stepped onto the first stone. It felt warm beneath his boots. With every careful step, the lantern across the river glowed a little brighter. Tiny golden fish appeared beneath the crystal-clear water, swimming peacefully between the stones. They left sparkling trails that faded like morning mist. When Eli reached the opposite bank, the child finally spoke. "Welcome, keeper." The voice was soft and calm, carrying the same peaceful tone Eli had heard in his dreams. "You know me. The river remembers everyone who walks with kindness." The child held out the lantern. "You may carry this for a little while." Eli accepted it carefully. The lantern felt surprisingly light. Its gentle warmth spread through his hands, and for a brief moment he saw flashes of distant places, snow-covered mountains, quiet deserts beneath endless stars, forgotten villages hidden among green valleys, and travelers lighting small lamps before resting for the night. The visions faded as quickly as they had come. "What did I see?" Eli asked. "The roads the lantern once protected." The child smiled. "They are waiting to shine again." Suddenly, the peaceful river became slightly darker. The golden fish vanished beneath the water. The white fox looked upstream. "They are near." Far in the distance, a thin ribbon of gray mist drifted slowly along the river, moving against the current. It did not behave like ordinary fog. It twisted gently, almost as though it were searching. The child stepped back. "My time here is finished." Before Eli could reply, the river guardian slowly dissolved into countless drops of golden light. The old lantern remained in Eli's hands, its flame burning more brightly than ever. The compass began spinning in slow circles. Then it stopped. Its needle pointed toward a narrow cave hidden behind a curtain of vines on the riverbank. Above the entrance, ancient words were carved into the stone. "Only those who protect light may enter without losing their way." A cool breeze flowed from within the cave. Somewhere deep inside, another lantern quietly awakened. Part 11. Eli stood before the vine-covered cave, holding the ancient lantern close to his chest. Its gentle golden flame reflected across the damp stone walls, filling the entrance with a peaceful glow. Behind him, the silent river continued its quiet journey through the forest, as calm as a dream that never wished to end. The white fox stepped beside him. "This is the cave of gentle echoes," it said softly. "What will we find inside?" Eli asked. "Not treasures, not monsters, only truths that have been waiting patiently." Eli smiled. Then let us enter. He carefully pushed aside the hanging vines. A cool breath of fresh air drifted from the darkness within. The cave was wider than it first appeared, with smooth stone walls sparkling faintly as though tiny stars had become trapped inside the rock long ago. Each step echoed softly, yet the echoes were unusual. Instead of repeating footsteps, they carried peaceful sounds. Someone laughing beside a fireplace. Rain falling gently upon a wooden roof. Pages turning in an old book. The quiet melody of a lullaby. Eli paused. The cave remembers. The fox nodded. It keeps the happiest echoes ever spoken. The gentle sounds followed them deeper underground. Soon they reached a circular chamber where hundreds of crystal lanterns rested upon carved stone shelves. None of them were lit. At the center of the room stood a single stone table. Upon it rested an old book bound in deep blue leather. No dust covered its surface. It looked as though someone had placed it there only moments before. Eli slowly opened the book. The pages were completely blank. There's nothing written here. The fox looked at the glowing lantern in Eli's hands. There is. As the lantern's warm light touched the empty pages, delicate golden words slowly appeared. Every kind act leaves a light. Every selfish act leaves a shadow. Every choice becomes a story. The words shimmered gently before fading away. A second sentence appeared. The second living memory waits where silence learns to sing. Eli carefully closed the book. So our journey continues. Yes, the fox answered. But every memory will become harder to find. Just then, one of the crystal lanterns on the wall flickered. Then another. Within seconds, dozens of tiny lights awakened throughout the chamber. The soft golden glow filled the cave with peaceful warmth. Eli watched in wonder. They're beautiful. They are greeting the lantern you carry. Suddenly, one lantern near the far wall changed color. Its golden flame slowly turned silver. Then gray. Finally, black. The warm light in the chamber dimmed. A quiet whisper drifted through the room. So, the keeper has arrived. The voice did not come from the fox, nor from the cave. It seemed to rise from the darkness itself. The lantern in Eli's hands burned brighter, pushing the shadows back. For a brief moment, a tall figure could be seen standing at the end of the chamber. Its face remained hidden beneath a long black hood. Only two pale eyes reflected the lantern's light. The figure did not move. It simply watched. Then, as silently as morning mist, it disappeared into the darkness. The fox lowered its head. One of the keepers of forgotten shadows has finally revealed itself. Eli tightened his grip on the lantern. Without speaking another word, he followed the fading footprints leading deeper into the cave of gentle echoes. Part 12. The fading footprints glimmered faintly across the smooth stone floor, leading Eli farther into the cave of gentle echoes. They looked as though they had been pressed into the rock by moonlight instead of feet. With the ancient lantern in his hand, he followed them carefully while the white fox walked quietly beside him. The deeper they traveled, the warmer the cave became. The walls sparkled with countless tiny crystals, each reflecting the lantern's golden flame into hundreds of dancing lights. The beautiful glow transformed the dark passage into something peaceful, almost dreamlike. After several minutes, the footprints came to an end before a pair of enormous stone doors. Each door was carved with 7 lanterns. Only one lantern held a tiny golden jewel. The first memory, Eli whispered. The fox nodded. The doors know what you carry. As Eli stepped closer, the jewel began to shine. A soft humming sound filled the chamber, gentle as a distant lullaby. Slowly, the great doors opened without a single creak. Beyond them lay a vast underground garden. Eli stopped in amazement. Hundreds of glowing flowers covered the ground, their petals shining in shades of gold, silver, and pale blue. Crystal streams flowed peacefully between them, and graceful white butterflies drifted silently through the warm air. It's beautiful, Eli breathed. This is the Garden of Quiet Hearts, the fox replied. Long ago, travelers rested here before continuing toward the Whispering Hill. They walked slowly along a winding path of smooth white stones. Every flower they passed turned gently toward Eli's lantern, as though greeting an old friend. Near the center of the garden stood a magnificent tree with silver leaves. Its branches were covered with tiny glass bells. Although no wind stirred the air, one bell rang softly. Then another. Soon the entire tree filled the garden with a peaceful melody. Eli closed his eyes. The music reminded him of evenings in Ashmere, when every home glowed with lantern light and families gathered together before sleep. A gentle smile crossed his face. Then he noticed something beneath the tree. A small wooden box rested among the roots. Its lid was decorated with the same leaf-shaped symbol as the silver key inside his satchel. The key, Eli said. He carefully removed the tiny silver key and placed it into the lock. It fit perfectly. With a quiet click, the lid opened. Inside rested a single crystal tear, glowing with a soft blue light. As Eli lifted it, warm memories filled his heart. Forgiveness, gentleness, the comfort of being welcomed home. The fox smiled. The second living memory. The crystal tear floated into the air and slowly disappeared into the ancient lantern. Its flame grew brighter, becoming richer and warmer than before. At that very moment, every glass bell upon the silver tree fell silent. The butterflies vanished. Even the glowing flowers lowered their petals. From somewhere beyond the peaceful garden came the slow sound of footsteps. One, then another. Someone was approaching through the crystal mist. A calm but unfamiliar voice echoed gently across the garden. You have found the second memory. The footsteps stopped. I have been waiting for you, Eli. Part 13. The gentle voice echoed through the garden of quiet hearts, lingering among the silver leaves like the final note of a peaceful song. Eli stood still, holding the ancient lantern close. Its golden flame flickered softly, as if listening. From the crystal mist stepped an elderly man dressed in a robe the color of the morning sky. His long white hair rested upon his shoulders, and a wooden staff carved with tiny stars supported his slow, graceful steps. Around his neck hung a small lantern made of polished crystal, though no flame burned inside it. The white fox lowered its head with deep respect. The seventh guide, it whispered. The old man smiled kindly. There is no need for such formal greetings, old friend. His warm eyes turned toward Eli. You have traveled farther than any keeper in many generations. Eli bowed politely. I am honored to meet you. And I am grateful that you answered the lantern's call. The guide walked toward the great silver tree. As he touched its trunk, a gentle breeze swept through the garden. The glass bells began to ring once more, filling the air with peaceful music. You have gathered 2 living memories, the guide said. But 5 still sleep. Where are they? Eli asked. They cannot simply be found. They must awaken. The old man pointed toward the glowing lantern. The lantern does not collect objects. It collects choices. Eli looked thoughtfully at the warm golden flame. So every memory comes from kindness. The guide nodded. Kindness, patience, hope, wonder, gratitude, courage, and peace. Each gift lives quietly inside every heart. As they spoke, a tiny white bird landed upon the guide's shoulder. It carried a folded strip of silver paper tied with a blue thread. The guide carefully untied it. His gentle smile slowly faded. The shadows have crossed the silent river. The fox's ears lifted. So soon? I'm afraid so. The guide looked toward the northern edge of the garden, where a faint gray mist had begun to gather between the glowing flowers. They are searching for the second memory. Eli instinctively held the lantern closer. Can they take it? No, but they can stop it from reaching the Whispering Hill. The old man gently tapped the ground with his staff. Immediately, the earth beneath the silver tree shimmered. A narrow staircase of crystal slowly appeared, spiraling downward beneath the roots. The path continues below. What lies there? Eli asked. The Hall of Silent Stars. The third living memory waits within. The guide removed the unlit crystal lantern from around his neck and placed it into Eli's hands. It carries no flame. Not yet. When your journey reaches the right moment, it will awaken on its own. Eli carefully placed the beautiful lantern inside his satchel beside the feather, the silver seed, and the tiny key. Behind them, the gray mist crept closer. The glowing flowers nearest the garden's edge slowly dimmed. The peaceful music of the glass bells became softer. The guide looked at Eli with calm determination. There is little time now. Eli nodded. Taking a deep, steady breath, he stepped onto the crystal staircase. As he descended beneath the ancient silver tree, the garden slowly disappeared above him, while countless tiny stars began to glow within the darkness below, lighting the way toward the next forgotten memory. Part 14. The crystal staircase spiraled gently downward, each step glowing with a soft silver light beneath Eli's feet. Above him, the peaceful garden of quiet hearts slowly disappeared from view, replaced by a ceiling filled with countless tiny stars embedded within the stone. They shimmered so quietly that the darkness itself seemed to breathe. The white fox walked a few steps ahead. "Welcome to the Hall of Silent Stars," it whispered. Eli looked around in wonder. The underground hall stretched farther than he could see. Crystal pillars rose like ancient trees, supporting a ceiling that sparkled like the midnight sky. Between the pillars floated thousands of tiny lights, moving slowly through the air like peaceful fireflies. There was no wind, no echo, only perfect stillness. Yet somehow, the silence felt comforting rather than empty. At the center of the hall stood a wide circular floor made of polished white stone. 7 glowing stars had been carved into its surface. Only 2 of them shone with warm golden light. "The first and second memories," Eli said. The fox nodded. "When another memory awakens, another star will shine." Eli stepped into the circle. The lantern in his hand immediately grew brighter. Its gentle flame reflected across the polished floor, and the 2 glowing stars pulsed softly in response. Suddenly, a clear musical note drifted through the hall. Then another. One by one, the floating lights gathered above Eli's head until they formed the shape of a magnificent constellation. It looked like a lantern. The constellation slowly rotated before a single beam of golden light descended toward the center of the circle. As it touched the stone, a beautiful crystal sphere rose from beneath the floor. Inside the sphere floated a tiny silver star. "What is it?" Eli asked. "The third living memory," answered the fox. "But it cannot be taken by force." Eli gently placed both hands upon the smooth crystal. The tiny star inside remained still. Nothing happened. He frowned slightly. "What should I do?" The fox smiled. "Listen." Eli closed his eyes. At first, he heard only silence. Then, very softly, voices began to appear. A child thanking her father. A traveler expressing gratitude for a warm meal. A friend saying, "I'm glad you came." The quiet words filled Eli's heart with warmth. Without thinking, he whispered, "Thank you for guiding me this far." The moment the words left his lips, the crystal sphere glowed brilliantly. The tiny silver star rose into the air and drifted toward the ancient lantern. As it entered the flame, the golden light became brighter than ever before. Across the polished floor, a third carved star awakened. The entire hall shimmered with peaceful light. For one wonderful moment, it seemed that every tiny star upon the ceiling smiled. Then the warmth suddenly faded. One by one, the floating lights stopped moving. The constellation dissolved. A deep shadow spread slowly across the far end of the hall. From within the darkness came the sound of slow applause. Clap, clap, clap. A tall hooded figure stepped between the crystal pillars. Its black cloak flowed like smoke, hiding everything except 2 pale silver eyes. The figure bowed politely. "So," it said in a calm voice, "the third memory has finally awakened." The lantern in Eli's hands burned brighter. But for the first time since his journey began, the shadow did not retreat. Instead, it smiled. Part 15. The hooded figure remained at the edge of the Hall of Silent Stars, standing perfectly still beneath the shimmering ceiling. Its silver eyes reflected the warm glow of Eli's lantern, yet no light touched the darkness surrounding its cloak. The silence between them lasted several long moments. Finally, the stranger spoke. "You need not fear me." Its voice was calm and gentle, carrying none of the harshness Eli had expected. The white fox stepped protectively in front of Eli. "Do not believe every quiet voice." The figure lowered its head. A wise warning. It slowly raised both empty hands. I have come without weapons. Eli studied the mysterious visitor. If you are one of the keepers of forgotten shadows, why have you followed me? The figure looked toward the 3 glowing stars on the stone floor. Because every light creates a shadow. The answer lingered in the still air. I do not understand, Eli admitted. Very few do. The hooded traveler took one careful step forward. Surprisingly, the darkness around its feet did not spread. Instead, it remained neatly gathered beneath the cloak-like evening mist. There was a time, the figure continued, when light and shadow walked together. The fox remained silent. Before fear divided them, the stranger added. Eli felt the warmth of the lantern grow steadier in his hands. Then why do the shadows chase the living memories? A quiet sigh escaped from beneath the hood. We seek something that was lost. What was lost? Our home. For the first time, Eli sensed sadness instead of danger. The mysterious figure reached into its sleeve and removed a small object wrapped in faded blue cloth. It gently placed the bundle upon the polished floor before stepping back. This belongs with the lantern. Without another word, the figure slowly disappeared into the darkness between the crystal pillars. No footsteps echoed. No shadows followed. Only silence remained. The fox waited a long moment before approaching the cloth bundle. It has gone. Eli carefully knelt beside the package. Inside rested a tiny silver compass. Unlike the brass compass he already carried, this one had no needle. Instead, a single glowing drop of light floated beneath its glass. Attached to it was a narrow strip of parchment. Eli unfolded it. Only one sentence had been written in graceful handwriting. Even shadows remember the sunrise. He looked toward the fox. Could the stranger have been telling the truth? The fox gazed thoughtfully at the distant darkness. Truth often hides where certainty refuses to look. Before Eli could ask another question, the ancient lantern suddenly projected a beam of golden light across the hall. The light stopped upon a distant crystal wall. There, invisible moments before, appeared the outline of a narrow doorway shaped like a lantern flame. Above it, glowing letters slowly formed. The path of gentle courage ** as the words brightened, the unlit crystal lantern inside Eli's satchel gave a faint pulse of warm light for the very first time. The fox smiled softly. The 4th living memory is calling. Together they walked toward the hidden doorway, unaware that somewhere deep within the quiet darkness, unseen eyes were watching not with hatred, but with hope. Part 16. The lantern-shaped doorway opened without a sound as Eli stepped closer. A warm golden glow spilled into the hall of silent stars, gently pushing back the shadows that lingered between the crystal pillars. The air beyond carried the comforting scent of cedar wood, fresh rain, and wild lavender. The white fox smiled. The path of gentle courage has accepted you. Eli crossed the threshold with the ancient lantern held carefully before him. The doorway closed quietly behind them. The new passage was unlike any place they had visited before. Its smooth walls shimmered with soft amber light, and delicate vines covered with tiny white blossoms climbed across the stone. Every few steps, small lanterns rested inside carved alcoves, each burning with a peaceful golden flame. What is this place? Eli asked. The corridor of quiet choices, the fox replied. Every traveler who seeks the Whispering Hill must walk here. They continued at an unhurried pace. Soon the corridor divided into 3 separate paths. Above each entrance hung an old wooden sign. The first read, "The short way." The second read, "The safe way." The third simply read, "The kind way." Eli studied them carefully. There are no instructions. There never are, said the fox. The 4th living memory cannot be found by cleverness. Without hesitation, Eli stepped toward the path marked the kind way. The moment his foot touched the smooth stone, the other 2 passages slowly faded away until only one remained. You chose with your heart, the fox whispered. The corridor grew brighter. Farther ahead they found a small wooden bench beside a quiet spring. Sitting there was an old traveler with tired eyes and dusty boots. His walking stick lay broken beside him. He looked up with a gentle smile. I fear my journey ends here. Eli knelt beside him. May I help? The traveler nodded. My legs are strong enough. But my staff is not. Eli removed the sturdy walking stick from his own backpack. It had accompanied him since leaving Ashmere. You may take mine. The old traveler hesitated. And what about you? I will find another. The man accepted the gift with grateful hands. As soon as he stood, his tired face became peaceful and bright. A warm golden light surrounded him for just a moment. Then he slowly faded like morning mist beneath the sunrise. Only the walking stick remained. No, even it had disappeared. The fox looked at Eli with quiet pride. You have awakened the fourth living memory. At once, the unlit crystal lantern inside Eli's satchel burst into a soft golden flame. Its light blended with the ancient lantern, making both glow brighter than before. A gentle breeze filled the corridor. Hundreds of tiny white blossoms drifted through the air like snowflakes. They circled Eli before dissolving into sparkling light. Somewhere far away, a fourth star awakened. The corridor itself seemed to sigh with relief. Then the brass compass began to spin rapidly. The silver compass with the glowing drop of light also trembled. Both stopped at exactly the same moment. Their directions matched. Straight ahead, beyond a round stone archway stood a quiet valley covered in morning mist. In its center rose a lonely lighthouse. It stood impossibly far from any sea. Yet its lantern was already shining. Part 17. Eli stepped through the round stone archway and entered the mist-covered valley. The air felt cool and fresh, carrying the gentle scent of wildflowers that grew among the soft green hills. Ahead, the lonely lighthouse stood in peaceful silence, its golden beacon turning slowly across the valley despite the absence of any ocean. It doesn't belong here, Eli whispered. The white fox smiled. It belongs wherever someone has lost their way. They walked through the quiet meadow toward the tall stone tower. Small white butterflies floated around them, disappearing into the mist before gently returning again. Every step felt calm, as though the valley itself welcomed travelers who carried hope. When they reached the lighthouse, Eli noticed that its wooden door stood slightly open. A warm light shone from inside. He pushed the door gently. The room was perfectly round. Bookshelves lined the curved walls from floor to ceiling. Thousands of old journals rested upon them, each carefully labeled with a year instead of a title. In the center sat a woman with silver hair, writing by the light of a small lantern. She looked up with kind eyes. I've been expecting you. Eli smiled politely. Do you live here alone? I keep watch. Over what? She closed the journal in front of her. Every traveler who chooses kindness leaves behind a story. I write them so they are never forgotten. Eli looked around the endless shelves. There must be thousands. There are. She reached toward one shelf and gently removed a slim blue journal. Its cover bore a single name. Eli of Ashmere. His eyes widened. But, I have only just begun my journey. The woman opened the journal. The first pages described everything that had happened since the elderly traveler knocked upon Eli's cottage door. Every detail was there. The ancient map, the white fox, the silent river, even the dream beneath the great tree. How is this possible? Eli asked. She smiled softly. The lighthouse remembers every step taken with a sincere heart. Then she turned to a blank page. The rest has not yet been written. She handed Eli a simple wooden pen. You may write one sentence. Only one. One sentence can change an entire journey. Eli thought quietly for several moments. Then he carefully wrote, May every light I find become hope for someone else. The ink glowed softly before sinking into the page. At once, the lighthouse trembled gently. High above, the great beacon shone brighter than ever before. Its golden light swept across the valley, reaching hills hidden beyond the morning mist. The woman closed the journal with a peaceful smile. The fifth living memory has begun to awaken. Just then, the brass compass emitted a clear musical tone. Outside, the mist slowly parted. Far across the valley stood an enormous stone gate covered with flowering vines. Upon its highest arch perched a magnificent white owl. The owl spread its broad wings and looked directly at Eli. Then, in a calm voice that echoed across the quiet valley, it spoke. The Whispering Hill is no longer far away. Part 18. The white owl remained upon the ancient stone gate, its snow-white feathers glowing beneath the gentle morning light. A cool breeze drifted through the valley, carrying the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers and fresh grass. The lighthouse behind Eli continued to shine, its golden beams slowly sweeping across the peaceful hills. The silver-haired keeper closed the blue journal and placed it carefully back upon the shelf. "Our paths separate here," she said with a warm smile. Eli bowed respectfully. "Thank you for protecting these stories." She nodded. "Stories protect us just as much as we protect them." The white fox quietly walked toward the open doorway. "It is time." Together they stepped outside. The valley looked brighter than before. Thousands of tiny flowers had opened beneath the morning sun, their petals sparkling with drops of dew. Butterflies drifted lazily through the air, and somewhere nearby a small stream hummed its gentle melody. The great stone gate stood at the far end of the meadow. As Eli approached, the white owl watched him without blinking. When he was only a few steps away, the owl spread its magnificent wings and glided silently to the ground. It bowed its head. "Welcome, Keeper of Four Lights." Eli looked at the ancient lantern in his hands. Its flame had indeed become brighter. Within the warm glow, he could now see 4 tiny stars circling peacefully around one another. "The memories are growing," the owl said softly. "But the journey is becoming more difficult." The enormous gate slowly opened inward. Beyond it stretched a quiet valley unlike any Eli had seen before. Hundreds of windmills turned slowly across the rolling hills. Their wooden blades moved without making the slightest sound. "The Valley of Silent Winds," whispered the fox. "The 6th living memory sleeps here." They followed a narrow stone path between fields of tall silver grass. Every windmill they passed carried a lantern hanging beneath its roof. Most were dark. Only a few glowed with faint golden light. "What happened to them?" Eli asked. "They fade whenever people forget to be grateful." Eli gazed thoughtfully at the silent valley. As they continued walking, they noticed a young shepherd sitting alone beside the path. Several sheep grazed peacefully nearby, but the boy himself looked worried. He stared at a broken wooden flute resting in his hands. "It belonged to my grandfather," he said quietly when Eli approached. "I cannot make it sing anymore." Eli knelt beside him. The flute had split along one side. Carefully, Eli removed a length of soft cord from his backpack and gently wrapped it around the cracked wood. "Try now," he said. The shepherd lifted the flute to his lips. A clear, gentle melody floated across the valley. At once, the silent windmills began turning a little faster. One by one, dark lanterns beneath them flickered to life. Warm golden light spread across the hills like the first glow of sunrise. The shepherd smiled with tears of gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you." As those simple words echoed through the valley, Eli's ancient lantern blazed warmly. Far above, another tiny star appeared within its golden flame. The white owl lifted its wings. "The 6th living memory has heard your heart." Then, somewhere beyond the last windmill, a deep horn sounded once. The peaceful valley fell completely silent. Even the turning blades stopped. The fox looked toward the distant horizon. "They are waiting for us." Beyond the silver fields, a dark mountain slowly emerged from the mist. At its summit stood the Whispering Hill. Part 19. The dark mountain rose quietly beyond the Valley of Silent Winds, its gentle slopes wrapped in drifting silver mist. At its summit rested the Whispering Hill, peaceful and mysterious beneath the pale morning sky. Though it appeared close, the white fox knew the final part of the journey would not be measured by distance. Eli stood silently, watching the hill. "So this is where the lantern belongs." The fox nodded. "It has been waiting longer than any of us can remember." The ancient lantern in Eli's hands glowed warmly. Within its flame, 6 tiny stars circled one another in perfect harmony. Their light reflected across the silver fields, making the morning dew sparkle like scattered diamonds. The white owl spread its wings. From this point forward, every step must be taken with a peaceful heart. Without another word, it lifted gracefully into the sky and disappeared into the drifting clouds. Eli and the fox continued toward the mountain. The narrow trail climbed gently through quiet forests of white birch. Soft birdsong echoed among the branches, and little streams crossed the path, their crystal water flowing over smooth stones. After several hours, they reached a small wooden bridge stretching across a deep ravine. Unlike every bridge Eli had crossed before, this one carried no carvings. No warnings, no symbols, only silence. The fox stopped. This bridge asks no questions. What must I do? Eli asked. Simply walk. Eli stepped onto the weathered boards. Halfway across, the world around him slowly disappeared. The trees faded. The ravine vanished. Even the fox was gone. He found himself standing alone beneath a sky filled with stars. Before him appeared every person who had helped him since leaving Ashmere. The elderly traveler, the glowing girl, the river guardian, the seventh guide, the lighthouse keeper, the young shepherd, each smiled warmly without speaking. Then, together, they slowly bowed. A peaceful voice echoed through the starlight. No one reaches the lantern alone. The vision gently dissolved. The bridge returned. The fox stood waiting on the other side with calm eyes. You have crossed the bridge of gratitude. As Eli stepped onto solid ground, the lantern suddenly shone brighter than ever before. A seventh empty place appeared within its flame. Only one star was still missing. The final memory, Eli whispered. The fox looked toward the summit. It waits at the top. The trail became steeper as afternoon sunlight softened into golden evening. At last they reached the base of the Whispering Hill. There stood a circular stone doorway covered with flowering vines and ancient ivy. At its center was a lantern-shaped lock. Eli removed the tiny silver key from his satchel. The moment he placed it into the lock, the vines gently pulled away. The heavy stone door opened inward without a sound. Warm golden light flowed from within. A peaceful breeze carried countless gentle whispers across the hill. None of the words were frightening. They sounded like quiet blessings spoken long ago. Eli took one slow breath and stepped inside. Far ahead, at the center of a vast stone chamber, stood 7 empty lantern stands. Above the final stand floated a single flame, waiting for the last living memory to awaken. Part 20. The vast stone chamber was filled with a peaceful golden glow. Ancient pillars circled the room like silent guardians, their smooth surfaces carved with stars, lanterns, and gentle vines. High above, the ceiling opened to the evening sky, where the first stars slowly appeared one by one. Eli walked carefully toward the 7 lantern stands. 6 of them already shimmered with warm golden flames. Only the 7th remained dark. The ancient lantern in his hands pulsed softly, as though it recognized the place where its journey had begun many generations ago. The white fox quietly sat beside the entrance. My path ends here, it said with a gentle smile. Eli turned in surprise. You aren't coming with me. The fox slowly shook its head. Every keeper must awaken the final memory alone. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eli knelt beside his faithful companion. Thank you, for every step. The fox lowered its head. It has been my greatest honor. A warm breeze drifted through the chamber. The 6 burning lanterns glowed a little brighter. Eli stood and continued toward the final empty stand. As he approached, the ancient lantern suddenly became weightless in his hands. The golden flame rose into the air like a tiny sunrise. It floated gently above the 7th stand but did not settle. Instead, it waited. The chamber became perfectly still. No wind, no birds, no whispers, only silence. Then a familiar voice echoed softly behind him. Eli. He turned. The elderly traveler who had first visited Ashmere stood quietly beneath the stone archway. His silver beard shimmered in the golden light, and the old walking stick carved with tiny moons rested peacefully in his hand. You found the way, he said with a proud smile. I couldn't have done it alone, Eli replied. The old traveler nodded. That is why the lantern never chooses those who seek glory. He slowly walked closer. The final living memory cannot be discovered. It must be given. Eli looked at the waiting flame. What must I give? The traveler placed a gentle hand over Eli's heart. Your promise. Without hesitation, Eli closed his eyes. He thought of Ashmere. The lanterns glowing outside every home. The peaceful forests. The silent river. Every person who had guided him. Every act of kindness he had witnessed. Then he spoke quietly. I promise that wherever darkness is met with fear, I will answer with kindness. Wherever hope grows faint, I will protect its light. And wherever someone feels forgotten, I will remind them they are never alone. The moment the final words left his lips, the chamber filled with brilliant golden light. The waiting flame descended onto the seventh lantern stand. It burst into a warm, radiant glow. At once, all 7 lanterns shone together. A gentle wave of light spread across the Whispering Hill, flowing through forests, rivers, valleys, villages, and distant mountains. Far away, in Ashmere, every lantern outside every home suddenly burned brighter than ever before. The ancient lantern in Eli's hand slowly dissolved into countless tiny stars, rising peacefully into the night sky. The elderly traveler smiled. The lantern remembers. Above the hill, dawn-colored light appeared across the heavens, even though the night had only just begun. And somewhere beyond the stars, the world whispered its quiet thanks. Part 21. The golden light spread far beyond the Whispering Hill, drifting gently across forests, rivers, quiet villages, and distant mountains. Wherever it passed, old lanterns that had remained dark for generations slowly awakened. Their warm glow filled the night with peaceful comfort, as though the world itself had taken a long, gentle breath. Eli stood silently among the 7 burning lanterns. The promise he had spoken still echoed softly within his heart. The elderly traveler looked toward the open sky, where thousands of tiny stars shimmered like scattered lanterns. You have restored the 7 living memories, he said. But every ending is also the beginning of another journey. Eli smiled. I thought the story was over. The traveler chuckled warmly. The best stories never truly end. At that moment, the stone floor beneath the lanterns began to glow. A great circle of golden symbols slowly appeared, forming an ancient map unlike any Eli had ever seen. It showed no kingdoms, no borders, only countless tiny lanterns scattered across the world. What is this? Eli asked. The living map. It reveals every place where hope is quietly waiting. One small lantern near the edge of the map flickered uncertainly. Then another. Soon several more dim lights appeared in distant corners. The traveler gently touched one glowing symbol. Even now, somewhere far away, another heart is searching for kindness. Eli knelt beside the map. So there is still work to do. There always will be. The white fox quietly entered the chamber once more. Its amber eyes sparkled with peaceful joy. The Whispering Hill has chosen its keeper. As the fox spoke, the 7 lanterns lifted from their stone stands. They circled slowly above Eli before becoming 7 tiny stars. One by one, the stars settled into the night sky, joining countless others that had watched over the world since ancient times. Only a single lantern remained. It floated gently toward Eli. Unlike the first lantern, this one was simple, made of polished oak and clear crystal. Its flame burned softly with all 7 colors hidden inside golden light. The elderly traveler placed it carefully into Eli's hands. This belongs to no king, no guardian, no legend. It belongs to the one who continues walking. Eli accepted the lantern with quiet gratitude. It felt light, warm, and wonderfully familiar. Outside the chamber, the first birds of morning began singing. A gentle breeze carried the scent of pine trees through the open doorway. Far below, Ashmere rested peacefully beneath the fading stars. Eli looked toward his village. I think it's time to go home. The traveler smiled. Yes, but remember, he pointed toward the glowing living map. Every peaceful road eventually becomes someone's beginning. Together, Eli and the white fox stepped out of the ancient chamber. As the first golden rays of sunrise touched the Whispering Hill, the morning mist slowly parted. Far below, a narrow path appeared where none had existed before. It stretched toward the horizon, winding through forests yet unseen. At its distant end, a single lonely lantern was already waiting. Part 22. The morning sun rose gently above the Whispering Hill, bathing the valley in soft golden light. Dew sparkled upon every blade of grass, and a peaceful chorus of birds welcomed the new day. Eli stood quietly with the simple crystal lantern in his hands, watching the newly revealed path disappear into the distant horizon. "It is beautiful," he whispered. The white fox stood beside him. "Every new path begins with a single peaceful step." Eli smiled. "But I promise to return home." "You will. The road knows." Together they began walking down the gentle slope. The forest welcomed them with familiar scents of cedar, pine, and fresh rain. Sunlight filtered through the branches, painting warm patterns across the mossy ground. As they walked, Eli noticed something unusual. The trees seemed brighter. The streams flowed more clearly. Even the songs of the birds carried a happiness he had never heard before. "The world has changed," he said. The fox nodded. "No, the world is remembering." Hours later they reached the Bridge of Gratitude once again. This time, the bridge looked different. Wildflowers grew along its wooden rails, and tiny lanterns hung beneath the beams, glowing softly even beneath the daylight. When Eli crossed, no visions appeared. Instead, a calm feeling settled over his heart. The bridge no longer tested him. It welcomed him. Beyond the ravine lay the Valley of Silent Winds. The windmills turned peacefully once more, their lanterns glowing with warm golden light. The young shepherd smiled as Eli passed. "My grandfather's flute still sings every morning," he called. Eli waved happily before continuing his journey. Soon they reached the silent river. Its crystal water now whispered softly instead of flowing in complete silence. The river guardian stood upon the opposite bank. He bowed respectfully. "The river thanks you." With a gentle wave of his hand, smooth stepping stones rose from the water. Eli crossed without hesitation. The guardian smiled. "You will always be welcome here." Then he faded into sparkling drops of golden light that drifted gently downstream. By evening, the familiar roofs of Ashmere appeared beyond the trees. Smoke curled peacefully from stone chimneys. Children laughed beside the village well. Lanterns were already being placed outside every home, just as they had always been. Yet something felt wonderfully different. Each lantern burned a little brighter than before. As Eli entered the village, the elderly baker looked up from his doorway. "Welcome home." Others gathered with warm smiles. No one asked where he had been. No one questioned the lantern he carried. Instead, they simply seemed happy that he had returned. That night, Eli placed his new lantern beside the window of his small cottage. Its gentle light spread across the room without casting a single shadow. Before going to bed, he opened his notebook. On the final blank page, words slowly appeared in golden ink. "Every ending becomes another beginning." Beneath the sentence, a new map quietly began drawing itself. This one pointed far beyond the mountains, toward a place no traveler in Ashmere had ever spoken about. A place called the Sea of Sleeping Stars. Part 23. The peaceful village of Ashmere settled into another quiet evening. Lanterns glowed outside every cottage, filling the narrow streets with soft golden light. Families gathered for warm meals, children listened to bedtime stories, and the gentle breeze carried the comforting scent of fresh bread and blooming lavender. Eli sat beside the window of his little cottage. The mysterious notebook lay open before him. The words written in golden ink had not disappeared. Instead, the new map continued to grow by itself. Fine silver lines stretched beyond forests, rivers, and distant mountains until they reached the edge of an enormous sea. Above the shining water appeared a graceful name: the Sea of Sleeping Stars. The crystal lantern beside the window flickered warmly. Its flame did not burn higher. It simply glowed with quiet certainty. A soft knock sounded at the door. Eli opened it. Outside stood a young girl carrying a tiny lantern almost too small for her hands. She smiled politely. "My grandmother said you might understand this." She carefully lifted the little lantern. Its flame was pale blue instead of gold. "I found it beneath an old willow tree." Eli knelt beside her. The lantern felt warm, just like the first ancient lantern he had carried. "When did you find it?" "This morning." She looked toward the hills. It began glowing when the sun came up. The white fox quietly appeared from behind the oak tree, as though it had never truly left. "It has begun," the fox whispered. Eli looked at the blue flame. "What has?" "The lanterns are awakening elsewhere." The little girl looked from Eli to the fox without fear. "Does this lantern belong to someone?" The fox smiled kindly. "It belongs to a journey." Just then, the notebook upon Eli's desk turned a page by itself. Golden letters slowly formed across the blank paper. "When one light awakens, another begins searching." Below the sentence, the map shimmered. Far beyond the sea of sleeping stars, a tiny blue lantern appeared. Its light blinked gently. Once, twice, 3 times. Eli's crystal lantern answered with a soft golden glow. The two lights seemed connected despite the great distance between them. Outside, the village clock quietly rang 9 times. The peaceful evening settled deeper across Ashmere. The little girl looked up at Eli. "Will someone come for this lantern?" Eli smiled warmly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it has already found the person it was waiting for." She held the lantern close to her heart. Its blue flame immediately grew brighter. The fox watched with gentle eyes. The road is choosing again. Far above the village, the first stars of the night slowly appeared. One of them shone with an unusual blue light. It drifted gently across the sky before coming to rest above the distant eastern mountains. Eli followed it with his eyes. He smiled. Somewhere beyond the quiet hills, beyond the forests, and beyond the endless sea of sleeping stars, another peaceful adventure had already begun. Part 24. The blue star lingered above the eastern mountains long after the other stars had settled into their familiar places. Its gentle glow reflected in the windows of Ashmere, casting a peaceful light over the sleeping village. Even the tiny blue lantern in the young girl's hands seemed to shine a little brighter beneath its silent watch. Eli remained outside his cottage, looking toward the distant horizon. The white fox sat beside the old oak tree, its silver-white fur glowing softly in the moonlight. "The star is calling someone," Eli said quietly. "It always does," the fox replied. "But not everyone hears its call." The little girl hugged her lantern close. "I can hear something." Eli knelt beside her. "What do you hear?" She closed her eyes for a moment. "It sounds like waves." Eli looked toward the notebook resting on his desk. The map of the Sea of Sleeping Stars shimmered once again. Although Ashmere lay far from any coast, the room suddenly filled with the faint scent of salt carried on a cool evening breeze. The pages turned by themselves. New words slowly appeared in glowing golden ink. "Follow the tide that sings without a sound." The fox smiled. "The sea has begun to remember." Outside, every lantern in the village flickered gently at the exact same moment. No wind blew. No clouds crossed the moon. Yet each golden flame leaned quietly toward the east. The village bell rang once. Its peaceful tone drifted across the valley. Far beyond the hills, another bell answered. Then another. The echoes continued until they faded into the distance like a chain of quiet greetings. The little girl opened her eyes. The waves stopped. "For now," Eli said gently. He walked to the window and carefully rolled up the growing map. The crystal lantern beside it glowed with calm confidence. He no longer felt surprised when the map changed. It had become another quiet companion. The white fox stood. "When morning comes, we will leave." "So soon?" Eli asked. "The road never sleeps." Eli looked around his little cottage. Everything was exactly as he had left it before his first journey. The wooden table, the shelves filled with maps, the warm blanket beside the fireplace. Yet somehow, home felt even more welcoming than before. That evening he shared tea with his neighbors, listened to laughter around the village square, and watched children carry their lanterns home beneath the stars. Peace filled every corner of Ashmere. Before going to bed, Eli placed the crystal lantern beside the open window. Its golden light reached into the quiet night. Far away, beyond forests and mountains, a faint blue light answered. Neither lantern burned brighter than the other. They simply greeted one another across the sleeping world. As Eli closed his eyes, the notebook quietly drew one final detail onto the map. At the center of the sea of sleeping stars appeared a tiny island. Upon that lonely island stood an old lighthouse, whose beacon had just begun to shine. Part 25. Morning arrived quietly over Ashmere, painting the rooftops with soft golden light. A gentle mist drifted through the streets while birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs. Outside every cottage, the village lanterns still glowed faintly, as though they had carried a little of the night's magic into the new day. Eli stepped outside with the crystal lantern hanging from his shoulder. The mysterious notebook rested safely inside his satchel beside the ancient map. Although he had returned home, he knew another peaceful journey was waiting beyond the horizon. The white fox appeared from the morning mist. "It is time," it said softly. Eli looked once more at his little cottage, the old oak tree, and the familiar stone path leading through the village. "I'll return again." The fox smiled. "The road always brings kind hearts home." Several villagers waved as Eli passed. The elderly baker handed him a warm loaf of fresh bread. "For the journey," he said with a smile. A young boy offered a small pouch of dried apples. "They're my favorite," he whispered shyly. Eli thanked them both. Every gift felt like another quiet lantern lighting his path. By the time the sun climbed above the hills, Eli and the fox had reached the eastern ridge overlooking Ashmere. From there, the village looked exactly as it had on the evening the mysterious traveler first arrived, tiny golden lanterns resting peacefully among green trees. The sight filled Eli with gratitude. He turned toward the distant mountains. Beyond them waited the sea of sleeping stars. The journey lasted many peaceful days. They crossed gentle rivers where swans floated silently across clear water. They wandered through meadows filled with white flowers that opened only beneath moonlight. Each evening they rested beneath quiet skies while the crystal lantern cast its warm glow around their small camp. At last, the scent of salt drifted upon the evening breeze. Eli climbed the final grassy hill. Before him stretched the endless sea. Its waters shimmered beneath the setting sun like liquid silver. As darkness slowly arrived, something extraordinary happened. Thousands of tiny lights appeared across the calm surface. They looked exactly like stars floating upon the waves. "The sea of sleeping stars," Eli whispered. The fox nodded. "The stars above watch the sea. The stars below remember the sky." A small wooden pier extended into the peaceful water. At its end rested an old sailboat painted white and blue. No ropes held it, no sailor waited aboard, yet a single lantern hanging from its mast burned with a soft blue flame. Eli stepped onto the pier. The boat drifted gently closer, as though recognizing him. Inside lay only two things: a folded blanket, and a weathered compass unlike either of the ones he already carried. Instead of pointing north, it pointed toward the tiny island where the distant lighthouse shone steadily against the night. The notebook inside Eli's satchel opened by itself. Golden words slowly appeared across a blank page. "Every sea carries a story that longs to be heard." Eli smiled peacefully. Holding the crystal lantern close, he stepped aboard the waiting sailboat. Without a single touch upon its sails, the little vessel quietly began to glide across the glowing sea toward the lonely lighthouse waiting beneath the stars. Part 26. The brilliant white light from the lighthouse swept slowly across the sea of sleeping stars, washing the calm waves in a soft silver glow. Every floating star upon the water shimmered as if greeting the beacon. Eli stood beside Mira at the foot of the tower, holding his crystal lantern close. Its warm golden flame remained steady, but he could feel a quiet change in the air. "The light has never turned white before," Mira whispered. "What does it mean?" Eli asked. She looked toward the endless sea, where the horizon had begun to blur beneath a veil of pale mist. "It means the sea has remembered something, or someone." Together they climbed the spiral staircase inside the lighthouse. The walls were lined with hundreds of blue lanterns, each glowing with a calm and gentle light. Beneath every lantern rested a silver plaque engraved with the name of a village, a traveler, or a forgotten place. Some names were clear, while others had faded with time, leaving only faint traces of letters behind. As they climbed higher, Eli noticed that one lantern after another brightened as he passed. Their flames leaned gently toward the crystal lantern in his hands, as though welcoming an old friend. At the top of the tower stood a great circular room open to the sky. In its center rested the lighthouse beacon, enclosed within a crystal sphere taller than Eli himself. Instead of fire, countless tiny stars floated inside the sphere, slowly circling one another in peaceful silence. Mira placed her hand upon the crystal. This is the heart of the lighthouse. Eli stepped closer. The tiny stars inside the sphere began moving faster, creating delicate ribbons of light that danced through the air. Suddenly, one small star drifted away from the others and floated toward him. Without fear, Eli reached out his hand. The star settled gently upon his palm. It felt warm, light, and strangely familiar. The moment it touched his skin, a vision appeared before his eyes. He saw a young sailor standing upon this very island many years ago. The sailor carried a lantern with a blue flame and smiled as ships safely crossed the quiet sea beneath a sky filled with stars. Night after night, he welcomed lost travelers, guiding them home with patience and kindness. Then the vision changed. The sailor grew older. One evening, he quietly placed his lantern inside the lighthouse and whispered, "May this light guide hearts long after mine has gone." The vision faded. Eli slowly opened his eyes. "The lighthouse remembers everyone who protected hope," he said softly. Mira smiled. "Now it remembers you as well." Just then, the crystal lantern hanging from Eli's shoulder gave a gentle pulse. A thin beam of golden light stretched from its flame to the great crystal sphere. The blue and golden lights blended together, filling the tower with a peaceful glow unlike anything Eli had ever seen. Far below, the sea answered. Thousands of floating stars began drifting toward the island, surrounding it in a slow circle of shimmering light. The waves remained calm, yet every glowing star seemed to hum with the same quiet melody Eli had heard during the voyage. Then, from beyond the mist, another light appeared. It was small at first. Then brighter still. Someone else was crossing the sea of sleeping stars, carrying a lantern that shone with a gentle emerald flame. Part 27. The emerald light drifted steadily across the sea of sleeping stars, moving through the silver mist like a quiet promise. Eli and Mira stood at the top of the lighthouse, watching as the distant glow slowly grew brighter. The crystal sphere continued to shimmer beside them, its tiny stars circling peacefully as though welcoming a familiar guest. "Another keeper?" Eli asked. Mira did not answer immediately. She rested one hand upon the cool glass of the great beacon and closed her eyes. The blue light within the sphere softened, and the gentle melody filling the tower became clearer. "No," she finally whispered. "Someone seeking the light." The emerald lantern glided closer. Soon a small wooden boat emerged from the mist. It looked older than Eli's sailboat, its weathered hull marked by years of quiet journeys. Standing at its bow was a young traveler wrapped in a dark green cloak. The hood covered most of the stranger's face, but gentle brown eyes reflected the glow of the emerald flame. The boat reached the dock without a sound. Eli and Mira descended the spiral staircase and stepped outside to greet the visitor. The traveler bowed politely. "My name is Rowan. I have followed the emerald lantern for many nights." Eli smiled warmly. "Welcome to the island." Rowan looked around in quiet wonder. "I thought the Sea of Sleeping Stars was only an old tale." "So did I," Eli admitted. The three of them walked slowly through the island's flower-covered paths. White blossoms swayed gently beneath the moonlight, while tiny glowing insects floated among the cedar trees like living stars. As they reached the round fountain where dreams rose into the sky, Rowan paused. The emerald lantern suddenly became brighter. "What is happening?" Rowan asked. Mira watched the fountain closely. The lantern has found what it was searching for. From the center of the fountain, one tiny silver star floated upward. Unlike the others, it did not rise toward the heavens. Instead, it drifted gently toward Rowan's lantern. The emerald flame welcomed it without a sound. For a brief moment, both the blue lighthouse beacon and Eli's golden lantern glowed in perfect harmony with the emerald light. The island seemed to breathe. A soft breeze carried the scent of the sea across the cliffs. The flowers slowly turned toward the three lanterns. Far above, a new star appeared in the night sky, shining with a faint emerald glow. Rowan looked at Eli. I don't understand. Eli remembered his own first journey. I didn't understand either. The road explains itself one step at a time. Rowan smiled. Then perhaps my first step begins here. Before anyone could reply, the crystal sphere inside the lighthouse flashed once. A beam of white light shot toward the northern horizon. There, beyond the calm sea, a dark shape slowly emerged from the mist. It looked like an enormous ship. Its sails were black, no lantern burned upon its mast. No voices echoed across its deck. It moved without wind, and yet it was sailing directly toward the island. Myra's peaceful expression became serious. The silent ship has awakened. The waves remained calm, but every lantern on the island flickered at the same time. The sea, which had felt like a gentle dream only moments before, now seemed to be holding its breath. Part 28. The silent ship glided across the sea of sleeping stars without the slightest ripple. Its dark sails hung motionless, yet the vessel moved with calm certainty through the silver mist. No birds circled above it. No waves touched its weathered hull. It seemed less like a ship and more like a forgotten memory returning after countless years. Eli stood at the edge of the island's stone pier beside Rowan and Mira. The golden, blue, and emerald lanterns shone quietly together, their gentle light reflecting across the still water. It feels lonely, Rowan whispered. Mira nodded. The silent ship does not bring storms. What does it bring? Eli asked. It carries forgotten promises. The answer lingered in the cool night air. As the ship drifted closer, its outline became clearer. The wooden planks were silver with age, and delicate carvings of stars decorated the bow. Although the vessel appeared abandoned, every rope was neatly tied, every sail perfectly folded, and every lantern hook stood empty, waiting. The ship finally stopped a short distance from the dock. A narrow wooden bridge slowly lowered by itself. No one stepped across, no voice called from within. Only silence welcomed them. The white fox quietly appeared beside Eli, as though it had been watching from the shadows all along. Some doors are opened by courage, it said. Others are opened by kindness. And this one? Eli asked. By trust. Holding his crystal lantern, Eli walked across the bridge. Rowan followed with the emerald lantern, while Mira carried her blue lantern close to her heart. The moment all three stepped onto the deck, the empty lantern hooks began glowing with soft silver light. The ship seemed to awaken. Gentle footsteps echoed somewhere below. Not hurried, not threatening, simply calm. Eli carefully opened the door leading into the captain's cabin. Inside, everything remained untouched. A polished wooden table stood near a round window overlooking the sea. Beside it rested an ancient compass larger than any Eli had ever seen. Instead of pointing north, its needle slowly circled a tiny golden star carved into the center. A weathered journal lay beside the compass. Its pages opened on their own. Across the first page, elegant handwriting appeared. Every promise kept becomes a light for someone yet unseen. As Eli read the words aloud, the golden lantern in his hands glowed brighter. The emerald lantern answered with a peaceful green light. The blue lantern shimmered like moonlight upon calm water. Together, their light filled the cabin. Suddenly, the old compass stopped moving. Its needle pointed through the round window toward the open sea. Far beyond the silent ship, another island slowly emerged from the mist. Unlike the peaceful lighthouse island, this one was covered with towering white trees whose branches sparkled like crystal beneath the stars. Above the island floated thousands of glowing birds, circling silently in the night sky. Rowan smiled with quiet wonder. It looks beautiful. Mira gazed thoughtfully at the distant shore. It is the island of Whispering Pines. The oldest lighthouse was built there before this one ever existed. Just then, a gentle bell rang somewhere deep within the silent ship. Only once. The sound was warm, peaceful, and strangely familiar. The white fox lifted its ears. The ship has accepted its passengers. Without anyone touching the wheel, the silent ship slowly turned toward the island of Whispering Pines and began sailing beneath the endless blanket of sleeping stars. Part 29. The silent ship sailed peacefully across the glowing waters, leaving behind the lighthouse island as it disappeared into the silver mist. Above, the stars shone with quiet brilliance, while below, their reflections drifted gently upon the sea like tiny floating lanterns. The voyage felt timeless, as though morning and night had agreed to share the same sky. Eli stood near the bow with Rowan, watching the island of Whispering Pines slowly grow larger on the horizon. The emerald lantern glowed steadily in Rowan's hands, while Eli's crystal lantern filled the deck with its warm golden light. Mira remained beside the great compass in the captain's cabin, quietly studying its movements. The white fox rested peacefully near the mast. "It has been many years since this ship carried travelers," it said. "Who sailed it before?" Rowan asked. "Keepers who believed that every heart deserved to find its way home." The gentle words settled into the silence. As the ship moved closer, the island revealed its quiet beauty. Towering white pine trees lined the rocky shore, their branches shimmering as though woven from frost and moonlight. Every breeze that touched them created a soft whisper, not with words but with peaceful melodies that drifted across the water. "It sounds like singing," Eli murmured. "The trees remember every lullaby ever shared beneath their branches," Mira replied as she stepped onto the deck. "They never forget a gentle voice." The ship reached a smooth stone harbor where no ropes or docks could be seen. Instead, glowing vines stretched from the shore and wrapped gently around the vessel, holding it in place without force. As the travelers stepped onto the island, the whispering melodies became clearer. They heard children laughing around warm campfires, parents humming bedtime songs, grandparents telling quiet stories beneath star-filled skies. Every sound carried comfort instead of sorrow. A narrow path wound through the white pines toward the heart of the island. Tiny blue flowers bloomed beside the trail, opening only as the three lanterns passed. Rowan looked around in amazement. "I've never seen flowers follow light. They bloom for hope," the fox answered. After a peaceful walk, the trees opened into a circular clearing. At its center stood an enormous pine unlike any other. Its trunk was wider than a cottage, and thousands of crystal pine cones hung from its branches, glowing softly in shades of gold, blue, emerald, and silver. Beneath the tree rested a single stone chair. It was empty. Upon the seat lay a folded cloak of snowy white wool. Beside it rested an unlit lantern carved entirely from clear crystal. Mira approached slowly. "The first listener's lantern," she whispered. Eli gently picked it up. It felt cool and almost weightless. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, every whisper in the forest stopped. The wind grew still. Even the sea seemed to pause. Then, from somewhere deep among the ancient pines, came the sound of careful footsteps. One, then another. A tall figure dressed in white robes emerged from between the glowing trees. His silver beard reached almost to his waist, and calm gray eyes reflected the light of every lantern in the clearing. He smiled kindly. "Welcome," he said. "I have waited a very long time for those who still remember how to listen." The crystal lantern in Eli's hands flickered once. Then, for the first time, a tiny silver flame appeared within it. Part 30. The tiny silver flame shimmered inside the crystal lantern, casting delicate patterns across the clearing beneath the great whispering pine. Though its light was gentle, it seemed to brighten every crystal pinecone hanging above. Soft reflections danced among the branches until the entire forest glowed like a peaceful dream beneath the stars. The old man stepped closer with slow, graceful movements. "My name is Orion," he said with a warm smile. "I have cared for this island since the first listener entrusted it to me." Eli bowed respectfully. "It is an honor to meet you." Rowan and Mira also offered quiet greetings. Orion nodded kindly before resting one hand upon the trunk of the ancient pine. At once, the whispering melodies returned, softer than before. They no longer sounded like distant voices. Instead, they blended into a calm harmony that settled gently in every heart. "The forest listens before it speaks," Orion explained. "That is why wisdom grows slowly here." He looked toward Eli's crystal lantern. The silver flame has awakened because you chose to hear others before seeking to be heard yourself. Eli lowered his eyes thoughtfully. I only tried to help. Exactly, Orion replied. The greatest kindness is often the quietest. The white fox smiled with quiet pride. Rowan gazed upward at the glowing branches. So every whisper becomes part of the forest. Every gentle word, Orion answered. Cruel words fade with time. Kind words remain. He led them toward a circle of smooth stones surrounding the great tree. In the center rested a shallow crystal bowl filled with perfectly still water. The surface reflected not the stars above but countless peaceful memories. Eli saw families sharing meals, travelers welcoming strangers, children comforting frightened friends. Every memory carried the same quiet thread of compassion. Orion gently touched the water. The reflections changed. A new image appeared. Far beyond the island, across the sea, dark clouds gathered around a lonely cliff where a single lantern flickered weakly against the wind. The lantern of Westwatch, Mira whispered. It is fading. Rowan looked concerned. Can we help? Orion nodded slowly. The sea brought you here because another light is calling. He reached into the crystal bowl and lifted a tiny silver shell. It glowed faintly with the same peaceful light as Eli's new silver flame. This shell remembers every promise spoken with sincerity, Orion said. He placed it carefully into Eli's hand. When hope feels distant, listen closely. You will hear the sea reminding you why you began. The shell felt warm despite its smooth surface. As Eli placed it safely inside his satchel, the silver flame in the crystal lantern grew brighter. Above them, one crystal pinecone released a single glowing seed. It floated gently downward and landed beside Rowan. The emerald lantern answered with a soft green pulse. Orion smiled. The island has welcomed all three of you. Just then, the whispering forest became silent once more. A cool wind swept through the clearing from the western shore. Far beyond the trees, a lonely lighthouse bell rang 3 slow times. The sound was faint, yet filled with urgency. Orion looked toward the dark horizon. The lantern of Westwatch cannot wait much longer. Without another word, the 3 travelers turned toward the forest path leading to the sea, while the silent ship quietly prepared for another peaceful voyage beneath the endless sky. Part 31. The lighthouse bell echoed across the island of Whispering Pines, its 3 slow chimes fading into the night like gentle waves upon a quiet shore. Every whisper within the forest had fallen silent, and even the crystal pinecones hanging from the ancient branches seemed to glow more softly than before. Eli adjusted the crystal lantern hanging from his shoulder. The silver flame within it burned peacefully beside the warm golden light, blending into a gentle glow that reached only a few steps ahead. Rowan carefully tucked the glowing seed into a small leather pouch. Mira looked toward the western cliffs where the distant bell had sounded. We must leave before the tide changes, she said. The white fox quietly led the way through the moonlit forest. As they walked, the towering white pines bowed gently above them, their branches forming a silver canopy that shimmered beneath the stars. Tiny blue flowers continued opening beside the path, releasing a sweet fragrance that reminded Eli of the gardens in Ashmere after a spring rain. No one hurried. The island seemed to encourage every traveler to walk with patience. Soon they reached the western shore. The silent ship waited exactly where they had left it, its weathered deck glowing beneath the moonlight. The glowing vines slowly released their gentle hold, as though they understood the journey had to continue. Before stepping aboard, Orion approached Eli one final time. He placed a weathered wooden flute into Eli's hands. Its smooth surface was carved with tiny waves and stars. This flute carries no ordinary music, Orion said softly. It only sings when played for another instead of yourself. Eli accepted the gift with gratitude. I will guard it carefully. Orion smiled. I know. The old guardian stepped back onto the shore. The silent ship drifted away without sails or oars, gliding silently across the sea of sleeping stars. The island of Whispering Pines slowly disappeared behind a curtain of silver mist. For a long while, the travelers stood quietly on deck, listening to the peaceful rhythm of the sea. Then Rowan noticed something unusual. The stars. Eli looked upward. The familiar constellations had changed. A long ribbon of bright stars now stretched across the heavens, pointing toward the western horizon. Mira studied the sky. The sea has opened the pilgrim's way. What does that mean? Rowan asked. It appears only when someone is needed. The ancient compass inside the captain's cabin began turning by itself. Its needle stopped beneath the glowing ribbon of stars. The crystal lantern answered with a soft pulse. Hours later, just before dawn, a dark outline appeared in the distance. At first it seemed to be another island. But as the mist slowly lifted, Eli realized it was something entirely different. A towering lighthouse stood alone upon a narrow cliff rising directly from the sea. Unlike every lighthouse they had seen before, this one showed no welcoming light. Its beacon flickered weakly, struggling against the growing darkness surrounding the tower. The sea itself seemed quieter there. Even the floating stars avoided the lonely cliffs. Mira lowered her voice. Westwatch. The white fox gazed steadily toward the silent lighthouse. The light has not gone out yet. Eli tightened his grip on the crystal lantern. Then we still have time. As the first rays of dawn touched the distant waves, the silent ship sailed toward the fading beacon, carrying 3 lanterns, and a promise that no light would be forgotten. Part 32. The first light of dawn spread gently across the sea of sleeping stars, painting the calm waves with shades of silver, gold, and pale blue. The silent ship continued its quiet journey toward the lonely cliffs of Westwatch, where the fading lighthouse stood against the morning sky like an old guardian refusing to abandon its post. From a distance, the tower looked majestic. As they sailed closer, however, Eli noticed deep cracks running through its white stone walls. Thick vines covered the lower windows, and weathered steps disappeared beneath soft green moss. The beacon at the summit still burned, but its once brilliant light now flickered weakly, fading for a heartbeat before returning again. It has been alone for a very long time, Mira whispered. The white fox nodded. Loneliness can dim even the strongest light. The silent ship reached a narrow stone pier carved into the cliff. No harbor greeted them. No keeper waited by the shore. Only silence. The 3 travelers stepped onto the ancient stones, carrying their lanterns with quiet determination. A cool breeze drifted from the sea, carrying the scent of salt and rain. As they climbed the winding staircase toward the lighthouse, Eli noticed hundreds of tiny seashells placed carefully along the edges of the path. Each shell held a single drop of clear water that sparkled like a tiny star. They were left by travelers, Mira explained. A way of saying thank you. The path ended before a heavy oak door marked with the symbol of a rising sun. Eli reached out and pushed gently. The door opened without resistance. Inside, the lighthouse felt peaceful despite its age. Dust rested upon the wooden floor, yet every chair stood neatly in place. Shelves filled with old maps lined the walls, while dozens of polished brass lanterns hung from sturdy beams overhead. None of them were lit. At the center of the room stood a long wooden table. Upon it rested a simple clay cup beside an unopened journal. Eli carefully lifted the journal. The first page contained only 1 sentence. The brightest light is the one that refuses to surrender. As he read the words aloud, the crystal lantern at his side glowed warmly. The silver flame inside answered with a calm pulse. Rowan's emerald lantern shimmered softly. Myra's blue lantern brightened in response. One by one, the brass lanterns hanging from the ceiling awakened. Golden flames appeared inside them without a single match being struck. Warm light filled the room. At that exact moment, footsteps echoed from the spiral staircase leading upward. Slow, measured, patient, an elderly woman descended, leaning lightly upon a carved wooden cane. Her silver hair was tied neatly behind her shoulders, and her kind eyes reflected the growing light around her. She smiled when she saw the travelers. I wondered how long it would take before the sea sent new keepers. Eli bowed respectfully. My name is Eli. I know, she replied gently. I am Evelyn, the last keeper of Westwatch. She looked toward the lanterns now glowing throughout the room. They have been waiting for someone willing to remember. Just then, the great beacon above the lighthouse suddenly flared with brilliant light. Its golden ray swept across the sea, reaching far beyond the horizon. In the distance, hidden beneath the morning mist, another forgotten lighthouse answered with a faint but unmistakable glow. Evelyn closed her eyes and smiled. It has begun. Part 33. The answering light shone faintly across the distant horizon, flickering like a tiny star that had finally awakened after a very long sleep. Eli stood beside the tall windows of Westwatch Lighthouse, watching the golden beam stretch over the calm sea. For several quiet moments, no one spoke. Evelyn rested her hand upon the old wooden railing. When one lighthouse remembers its purpose, she said softly, another finds the courage to shine again. The words settled gently into the peaceful silence. Mira smiled as the blue lantern in her hands glowed with renewed strength. Rowan looked toward the distant light with quiet wonder. So there are more lighthouses waiting? Evelyn nodded. Far more than anyone remembers. She slowly walked toward an old map hanging upon the stone wall. Unlike ordinary maps, this one showed no kingdoms or borders. Instead, dozens of tiny lighthouse symbols were scattered across oceans, rivers, lakes, and distant islands. Some glowed warmly, many remained dark, a few flickered uncertainly. This is the chart of guiding lights, Evelyn explained. It has been passed from keeper to keeper for centuries. Eli stepped closer. Near the western edge of the chart, the symbol for Westwatch now shone brightly. A second light farther north had also awakened. But deep in the eastern sea, one small symbol blinked weakly before fading almost completely. The light is disappearing, Rowan whispered. Evelyn touched the faded mark with gentle fingers. That lighthouse is called Dawn's Rest. It protects a lonely island where travelers once found shelter before crossing the northern waters. What happened? Eli asked. No one returned. The room became quiet again. Outside, gentle waves brushed against the cliffs below. The white fox gazed thoughtfully through the open doorway. Sometimes people lose their way. Sometimes the road loses its travelers. Evelyn carefully removed a small brass key from around her neck. Its handle was shaped like a rising sun. She placed it into Eli's hand. This opens the lantern archive. What is it? Eli asked. The place where every keeper leaves behind one lesson for those who come after. Together they climbed the spiral staircase beyond the beacon room. At the very top of the lighthouse stood a narrow circular chamber unlike any Eli had seen before. Shelves curved around the walls from floor to ceiling. Upon each shelf rested a beautifully crafted lantern. Some were made of crystal, others of polished wood, silver, copper, or blue glass. Each carried a tiny handwritten note tied beneath its handle. They belong to the keepers, Evelyn whispered. The lanterns remain here even after their journey's end. Eli walked slowly through the room, reading a few of the small messages. Walk gently. Hope travels farther than fear. Every stranger may become a friend. Each simple sentence filled the room with quiet warmth. At the center stood one final empty shelf. No lantern rested there. Evelyn smiled kindly. One day, another traveler will read the lesson you choose to leave behind. Before Eli could answer, The chart of guiding lights downstairs suddenly began glowing through the floor beneath them. The faded symbol of Dawn's Rest flashed 3 times. Then everything became still. The white fox quietly lifted its head. The next journey has already begun. Part 34. The soft glow from the chart of guiding lights slowly faded, leaving the lantern archive wrapped in peaceful silence once again. Eli stood before the empty shelf, gently holding his crystal lantern while the tiny silver flame shimmered beside the warm golden light. Around him, the lanterns of countless keepers glowed with quiet dignity, each carrying the memory of a life spent guiding others. Evelyn smiled warmly. Every keeper leaves behind more than a lantern. They leave behind hope. Eli slowly nodded. I think I'm beginning to understand. The elderly keeper led the travelers back down the spiral staircase. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Westwatch, filling the lighthouse with soft golden rays. Outside, the sea stretched peacefully to the horizon, its floating stars fading one by one beneath the growing daylight. Rowan carefully studied the ancient chart once more. The symbol for Dawn's Rest continued to pulse faintly. It still needs help. It does, Evelyn replied. But not in the way you expect. She reached beneath the large wooden table and carefully lifted an old sea chest bound with polished brass. The lock opened with the small sun-shaped key she carried. Inside rested dozens of neatly rolled maps, each tied with a different colored ribbon. One ribbon was deep blue, another silver, another emerald green. At the very bottom lay a map tied with a ribbon of pure white. Evelyn handed it to Eli. This map has waited many years. He untied the ribbon with care. The parchment opened by itself. Unlike every map he had seen before, this one showed no roads at all. Instead, tiny points of light drifted slowly across its surface, changing places like stars moving through the night sky. The paths are alive, Eli whispered. They appear only for those traveling with purpose, Evelyn answered. As she spoke, a narrow line of silver light slowly formed across the map. It stretched northward over the sea before ending at a small island marked by the faded symbol of Dawn's Rest. Mira smiled. The sea has chosen our course. Just then, Rowan noticed something unusual. One tiny point of green light had appeared far from the silver path. It wasn't there before. Evelyn looked thoughtfully at the glowing mark. No, it means another lantern has awakened somewhere beyond the Eastern Isles. The white fox quietly wagged its tail. The light continues to spread. A peaceful breeze entered through the open lighthouse door, carrying the scent of pine forests and saltwater. Far below, the silent ship waited beside the stone pier. Its weathered sails shimmered softly beneath the morning sun. As the travelers prepared to leave, Evelyn placed a small glass bottle into Eli's hands. Inside floated a single glowing drop of seawater. It is called the tide's memory, she explained. If you ever lose your way, open the bottle. The sea will remind you where hope is needed most. Eli thanked her with a respectful bow. Before stepping outside, he looked back at the warm, welcoming lighthouse one final time. The beacon shone steadily now, stronger than ever. Far beyond the cliffs, another distant light answered across the sea. The journey toward Dawn's Rest had begun. But none of them noticed the tiny white seabird quietly circling high above the silent ship, carrying a folded silver message tied gently beneath its wing. Part 35. The little white seabird circled gracefully above the silent ship before gliding toward the deck. Morning sunlight shimmered across its snowy feathers, and the folded silver message tied beneath its wing sparkled softly as though it carried a piece of the sea itself. Eli stretched out his hand. Without fear, the bird landed gently upon his wrist. "It has come a long way," Mira said quietly. The white fox nodded. "Messenger birds never lose their path." With great care, Eli untied the slender silver ribbon holding the message in place. The bird remained perfectly still, watching him with bright, gentle eyes. He unfolded the tiny sheet of silver paper. Only a few graceful words had been written. "When the northern tide becomes silent, follow the song beneath the waves." No signature appeared. No seal marked the page. Yet the handwriting seemed strangely familiar. Rowan studied the note. "Who sent it?" Eli slowly shook his head. "I don't know." Evelyn smiled from the stone pier. "Perhaps the sea itself." The bird spread its wings once more. Before flying away, it softly tapped Eli's crystal lantern with its beak. The silver flame inside the lantern brightened for a single heartbeat. Then the bird disappeared into the clear blue sky. The silent ship quietly pulled away from Westwatch Lighthouse. No ropes were cast. No sails were raised. The vessel simply drifted forward as though carried by an unseen current. The great beacon behind them continued shining proudly, its golden light visible long after the lighthouse itself had become a distant silhouette upon the cliffs. Hours passed peacefully. The sea remained calm, reflecting white clouds that floated lazily overhead. Tiny silver dolphins surfaced beside the ship, swimming in graceful circles before vanishing beneath the sparkling water. "They're guiding us," Rowan whispered. "They always greet travelers heading north," Mira replied. As afternoon slowly faded toward evening, the sky turned soft shades of lavender and gold. The ancient compass inside the captain's cabin began to hum quietly. Its needle, which had remained steady all day, slowly shifted toward the northeast. At the same moment, the glowing map Evelyn had given Eli revealed another change. The silver path widened. Small blue stars appeared along its edges, forming a gentle trail across the sea. "It wasn't like that before," Eli said. "The road is becoming clearer," answered the fox. Just after sunset, a cool breeze swept across the water. The sea grew perfectly still. Not a single wave touched the hull. The silence was complete. Rowan remembered the message. "The northern tide becomes silent." Eli nodded. "Follow the song beneath the waves." They listened carefully. At first there was nothing. Then, very softly, a beautiful melody rose from beneath the sea. It was slow, peaceful, and comforting, like a lullaby carried through deep water. The glowing stars beneath the surface began moving together, forming a winding river of light beneath the ship. Without anyone steering, the silent ship gently changed course to follow the underwater song. Far ahead, hidden within the twilight mist, a faint white glow appeared. It did not resemble a lighthouse. Instead, it looked like an enormous archway rising directly from the sea, its graceful pillars carved from crystal and illuminated by the light of countless sleeping stars. The fox gazed toward it with quiet awe. "The Gate of Tides," it whispered. "Few have ever seen it with their own eyes." Part 35. The little white seabird circled gracefully above the silent ship before gliding toward the deck. Morning sunlight shimmered across its snowy feathers, and the folded silver message tied beneath its wings sparkled softly as though it carried a piece of the sea itself. Eli stretched out his hand. Without fear, the bird landed gently upon his wrist. "It has come a long way," Mira said quietly. The white fox nodded. "Messenger birds never lose their path." With great care, Eli untied the slender silver ribbon holding the message in place. The bird remained perfectly still, watching him with bright, gentle eyes. He unfolded the tiny sheet of silver paper. Only a few graceful words had been written. When the northern tide becomes silent, follow the song beneath the waves. No signature appeared, no seal marked the page. Yet the handwriting seemed strangely familiar. Rowan studied the note. Who sent it? Eli slowly shook his head. I don't know. Evelyn smiled from the stone pier. Perhaps the sea itself. The bird spread its wings once more. Before flying away, it softly tapped Eli's crystal lantern with its beak. The silver flame inside the lantern brightened for a single heartbeat. Then the bird disappeared into the clear blue sky. The silent ship quietly pulled away from Westwatch Lighthouse. No ropes were cast. No sails were raised. The vessel simply drifted forward as though carried by an unseen current. The great beacon behind them continued shining proudly, its golden light visible long after the lighthouse itself had become a distant silhouette upon the cliffs. Hours passed peacefully. The sea remained calm, reflecting white clouds that floated lazily overhead. Tiny silver dolphins surfaced beside the ship, swimming in graceful circles before vanishing beneath the sparkling water. They're guiding us, Rowan whispered. They always greet travelers heading north, Mira replied. As afternoon slowly faded toward evening, the sky turned soft shades of lavender and gold. The ancient compass inside the captain's cabin began to hum quietly. Its needle, which had remained steady all day, slowly shifted toward the northeast. At the same moment, the glowing map Evelyn had given Eli revealed another change. The silver path widened. Small blue stars appeared along its edges, forming a gentle trail across the sea. It wasn't like that before, Eli said. The road is becoming clearer, answered the fox. Just after sunset, a cool breeze swept across the water. The sea grew perfectly still. Not a single wave touched the hull. The silence was complete. Rowan remembered the message. The northern tide becomes silent. Eli nodded. Follow the song beneath the waves. They listened carefully. At first there was nothing. Then, very softly, a beautiful melody rose from beneath the sea. It was slow, peaceful, and comforting, like a lullaby carried through deep water. The glowing stars beneath the surface began moving together, forming a winding river of light beneath the ship. Without anyone steering, the silent ship gently changed course to follow the underwater song. Far ahead, hidden within the twilight mist, a faint white glow appeared. It did not resemble a lighthouse. Instead, it looked like an enormous archway rising directly from the sea, its graceful pillars carved from crystal and illuminated by the light of countless sleeping stars. The fox gazed toward it with quiet awe. The gate of tides, it whispered. Few have ever seen it with their own eyes.